Hello, everybody. Open up Google Docs, follow along because we are making a resume. Now, there's no right way to do a resume, but there's definitely a wrong way to do a resume. This is a pretty standard introductory method for a resume. It's not ideal if you have more sophisticated strategies. That's great. This is just a standard beginner resume. Um, Now, ideally, you'd be doing this on Microsoft Word, where you get more features and customizability. However, my district is selling out student metadata to Google, so we use Chromebooks, which is why I am doing this on Google Docs. We've got three rules for resumes. Those three rules are that they ought to be concise, consistent, and convenient. So when I say concise, there's some rules to resume writing that I'll be talking about in a bit. They should also fit entirely on one page. No one wants to read a resume that's more than one page. So they should be concise. They need to be consistent. However, you decide to format your sections or your work descriptions, your dates, whatever, all of the formatting needs to be perfectly consistent. There's nothing more confusing than one section being bold and another section being underlined. It needs to be perfectly consistent. Very, very important. Which brings me to rule number three: your resume must be convenient. There's a rule, something to the effect of your resume reader must be able to identify 6 things in 6 seconds. So we want to make sure our resume is convenient as possible so that they can do that. So without further ado, let's dig in. I am going to, right off the bat, go to a very boring font and a very boring font size. Times New Roman 12. This is where I will be living for this resume. The first thing I'm going to do is have contact information at the top of my resume. And I'm also going to center my contact information. There's other things that you can do in terms of organizing where your name shows up, where your contact information shows up. That's great. This is just how I do it. My name is going to go top. That's going to be in bold. I'm going to have my address next, include email because that's a thing now, and my phone number. Uh, Basic contact information for a basic resume. One thing that I like to do is to make my name huge. 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 And the reason for that is as my resume reader is rifling, let's go with that, rifling through resumes for filing, either into the yes slash maybe category or the no slash garbage bin. I want to make sure that they're able to find my resume quickly. So that's what my contact information looks like. That's done. That's great. Billy Billerson, size 24, huge font. Everything else, size 12. I'm now going to list out some of the categories that I see in resumes. I see an objective a lot of the time, maybe referred to as a professional statement, education. Now, as a student, the last 12 or so years of your life, school has been your full time job. So school goes at the top of your resume. The exception is the objective comes first if you have one. More to come on that later. But aside from that exception of objective, education should go at the top. Sometimes people add skills to their resume, then we get experience. When it comes to experience, feel free to split that up. You can have work experience in one section, volunteer experience in another section. That's totally fine. I'm going to lump them together. Maybe you will include achievements if you have some interesting ones, and then references. Some people like to get cute with the references and write references available on request. Um, I get why when your references are included in the application for almost every job anyway. However, if for no other reason Then this, you will want to include references. References are required for your resume that you submit as a graduation requirement. So, if you're a part of our school and you know that you need to do a resume as a part of your senior project, we want to see your references. So just make sure they end up on this resume. Alrighty, now, in order to make my resume convenient, I am going to make it really easy to identify all of the major sections. And the way I do that is by making every section big, bold, and underlined. My reader's eyes will gravitate towards the big, bold, and underlined sections, and that's how they know they're entering the new territory of a new section. Let's talk about objectives very briefly. Here's all I'm going to say about this: is the objective is basically useless. I suggest you cut it out entirely. Here's why. The majority of objectives I see read something like this: looking forward to bringing my enthusiasm and hard work to your organization where I can be an asset to your business and learn skills along the way. That's literally all fluff. Unless you have something specific to the job that you're applying for. If you're not able to name drop the company specifically, the job title, and something really interesting that doesn't fit anywhere else in your resume, then you might consider adding an objective or professional statement. But if your professional statement sounds like, I can't wait to work for you, I would delete it because chances are you're going to need that room on your resume for something else. Because remember, you only get one page. All right, let's move down to education. I want to talk about my education at AG West Black Hills High School in Olympia, Washington, where I am expected to graduate. Well, right, expected graduation. Um, June 2021. Wow, that is a nightmare to read. How can we fix that? Well, what I'm going to do in this resume is everything within a section is going to be indented. That's what I'm going to do. And then I think all of my organization names, whether it's the name of the place I worked or the name of the school I attended, that will go in bold. Olympia, Washington. Better put a comma between cities and states because that's the thing to do. And then I think what I'll do is anytime I have a date, I will have that on the next line. And then I think what I'll do is I'll have all of my dates italicized as well. Okay, so now I'm setting the stage for how I will format the rest of my resume consistently throughout the rest of the page. Okay, organization titles, bold, city, plain, dates, italicized. Wowzers, this is looking great. You can also include experiences or details from high school that would separate you from like 80 to 90% of other applicants. Some people like to put their GPA on their resume. That works if it separates you from 80 to 90% of other applicants. Personally, I wouldn't put a GPA in my resume if it was less than a 3.5. It probably depends on where you're applying. It probably depends on your community and expectations. Um, but if you feel like your GPA is an asset to your resume, then feel free to include it. Other things that you might include are coursework that's interesting or sets you apart. In this one, I am going to include things like AP classes. I'm a social studies nut, so maybe I took AP World History and AP US History. Maybe my school offers something that's not an advanced class, but it's still kind of a weird class that separates me from other applicants. Maybe something like physics of flight. Now, be careful with these because if you go to a school that offers something cool and weird, like physics of flight, chances are businesses in the local community are going to be used to seeing this on a resume. So that might not be particularly special. However, if you plan on leaving the state or even leaving the local area, if you're in if you're in another town, businesses there won't be used to seeing things like physics of flight. And so they'll think to themselves, wowzers, physics of flight, that's cool. Especially if it's a job that relates to what you learned about in the class. For example, physics of flight would be particularly relevant to people going into engineering or a job that requires some sort of technical hands on experience. You just need to do thinking about how your experience relates to the job that you're applying for. Anytime that you can personalize your resume to the job that you're applying for, that's great. Do it absolutely. Maybe you also have experiences doing things like advanced marketing. Advanced marketing is great. Maybe um, relevant for all sorts of jobs. And maybe you took a class that required an audition, something like jazz band. If there was something that you needed to compete in order to earn your spot in that class, that might be something worth mentioning. And then I'm also going to include some other activities. Maybe there were some things that I did um, outside of class, but still within school. Maybe I was a uh, soccer 3 year better. Maybe I was the founder of Ultimate Frisbee Club. Hint, hint, for those of you that don't have an Ultimate Frisbee Club. And junior class treasurer, right? These are things that are outside of class, but still a part of school, right? These are things that might set you apart from 80 to 90% of other applicants. Good information to have. All right, I'm going to move on to skills. Skills, like the objective, is probably useless unless you have some skill that sets you apart from 80 to 90% of other applicants. I would probably just leave it off. Unless you're fluent in another language, you know how to code, you have certifications and relevant skills, I would really just not include the skills at all. Things like I work well on a team, or friendly, or proficient in Microsoft Word. Um, these are things that either are subjective, like how the heck are you measuring friendly? That means different things to different people, or things that apply to most people at this point graduating high school, proficient in Word or PowerPoint or whatever. I would just save your space on the resume. Um, Now, there's some weirdness for certain things, like when it comes to first aid, CPR certification, food handler's permit. Those are things that a lot of people have. So I would not include those certifications unless it's required for the job you're applying to. Lifeguards, include your CPR certification. Um, Restaurant applicants, include your food handler's permit. If it's not required for the job, those things aren't, particularly special. Like you need it for a lifeguard job, right? So if you don't need it for the job you're applying for, I would just save the space in the skills category. Moving on to experience. This is the bread and butter of a resume. So I'm going to dig right into my first experience. Let's say that experience is at McDonald's. The McDonald's in Tumwater, Washington. I'm going to indent what's within this section. The job goes in bold. I'm doing nothing to the location. Let's say I need to let my resume reader know what I did. I was a crew member at McDonald's, and I was a crew member from in italics because that's what I do with all of my dates. June 2020 to present. Your resume reader wants to know if you were a crew member, a manager, CEO. So you better put that in your resume. And the next thing I want to make sure I have in this section is a list of duties. Duties. So I'm going to make all of my job descriptions in they're going to go in bullet points. Okay, now here's the trick for writing job descriptions, your duties. You're going to start each bullet point with a resume verb. We're not writing in complete sentences. We're not starting sentences with I did this, I did that. We're just starting with the verb. Now, Google resume verbs, and you will find lists, dancing plethoras of words that can be used in your resume, and they are fantastic. You will find ways to improve your resume from saying something lame like made food to managed food preparation and maintained health and safety standards. Oh yeah. Oh, you made food and wiped down the counters. But when you use these resume verbs, you paint a picture to the person reading your resume about the kinds of skills that actually go into the job that you're doing. Maybe to you, you made food and wiped down counters, but to the untrained eye, the layman, the observer who's not familiar with the pain and sweat and toil of fast food work, this paints a picture of what you are doing. You're not just putting pickles on a bun, right? You're communicating with your team. You're working together. You're multitasking for sure. You've got an eye on the clock so that you can get food out quickly. And you need to make sure that you're meeting the special orders because for some reason, weirdos want cheese on their McChicken, right? All of that is happening simultaneously so that you can get a full lunch out in 2.5 minutes. And that's probably on the longer end of things, right? I mean, shout out to the fast food workers out there. So, long story short, use resume verbs to your advantage. You didn't make food, you managed food preparation, you maintained health and safety standards. Maybe you also monitored and facilitated cleaning of the workspace, lobby, and bathrooms. Okay? You cleaned stuff. But what goes into that process of cleaning? Well, you have to keep an eye on the lobby. You have to know where the garbage is. You have to know where things are getting messy. Have to know where to spend your time, and then you have to make it happen, right? So we're not lying on the resume, right? We're leveraging resume verbs to paint a picture of what our job description entailed. Maybe finally, we facilitated is a great one, customer experience by taking orders and resolving complaints, right? Doesn't that just sound so much better than dealt with custies? You facilitated a customer experience by taking orders and resolving complaints. What does that tell your employer? It tells your employer that you're able to resolve conflict with angry customers. You're able to, multitask and be a liaison of customer service. Shout out to the fast food workers out there. Another popular one is maybe babysitter. Maybe you are a babysitter in Lacey, Washington. This one's weird, right? Because there's not a company name for babysitting. Um, Maybe if you worked at the YMCA, right, and then your job title would be childcare supervisor or something like that. But if you were a babysitter for a family, just gonna have to kind of write babysitter here. And so in that case, I think I'll just leave this blank where I would normally write job title, like up here for McDonald's, we had crew member. I think I'm just gonna leave it blank and it's just gonna be babysitter, right? Sometimes there's no right answer to your resume problems, but we're just gonna keep it as consistent as possible. Let's say I did babysitting from May to September 2019. Okay. Oh, I haven't mentioned this yet. This is an important aspect of the resume. All experience ought to be in reverse chronological order, which means most recent experience comes first. This means that if you were the ambassador to Eritrea for the United States in 2018, well, that's a bummer. McDonald's is going on top of your resume because that's the most recent experience. Okay. Your employers want to see what you were doing last and they want to see that information first. Okay. So I am listing out my experience in reverse chronological order, which means recent experience shows up first, then the experience before that. I better add a description of my duties. Those are bullet points. I'm using these buttons to just add a little bit of an indent because we're getting into more specific information. Man, what's babysitting? What did I do? I watched kids. I supervised a 4-year old and 7-year old during the summer. I mean, we just played games. Like, I don't know what I scheduled and organized fun and enriching activities for 4-hour shifts. I made snack. I don't what we were like carrot sticks. So I planned and prepared healthy meals and snacks. Snacks. Make sure you spell things correctly. That helps. So what did we do here? We used resume verbs to paint a picture of what our experience entailed, right? We're leveraging this language to paint a more specific picture of the skills that we have as a result of what we did, right? So, what did we tell our employer, a potential employer, by using these words? That we're a leader, we can supervise, that we're well organized and can meet a schedule, right? That we can provide an enriching experience as well as a fun one, that we are um, planners, right? So that leans on being organized, following a schedule, using a plan, and we come prepared, right? These are words that anchor our experiences and skills in the minds of our employer. That's why these resume verbs are so important. And I can't stress enough how useful it is just to find a list of a bazillion of them on Google and just kind of look through that list until you find that word that really explains what you did. Don't lie, don't lie, but use your resources. Finally, maybe you will include a different section for volunteer experience. Maybe you have a lot of volunteer experience, so you want a separate section. For me, I just spent one summer working at the Tumwater Food Bank, and that was in Tumwater, Washington, as you can tell, because I am not bolding Tumwater. And I'll let my potential employer know here that my job title was volunteer. So here's how they know that I was not being paid for this work, that this work was an act of pure altruism. Can't wait to hear from the Rand fans in the comments. And then finally, including the date. And you know it's the date because I am putting the date in italics. Okay, gotta go faster, gotta go faster. 18. Cool. What were my duties? Well, you'll know what my duties are because I'm putting them in italics and I'm making sure everything is lined up, everything is consistent, the formatting is staying the same. I sorted and organized inventory to maximize efficiency. If you're a boss, who doesn't love efficiency? I also distributed food to clients. Actually, you know what? I think we can beef that up even a little bit more. I managed distribution of food to clients. So not only did I do something, but like I supervised it, I organized it, I managed this process that we set out to do. Okay, I'm gonna move on just because I don't want to take up too much time doing this. You can pause the video if you need to catch up. But in the meantime, let's move on. Okay. So as you can see, we're already bleeding on to a second page. Okay. So we're going to have to come back and deal with this somehow a little bit later. Um, but maybe you have some awards that you want to talk about. Maybe there's some achievements um, that you want on your resume. I'm just going to type them out and then we'll talk about them after. Maybe, oh, wait, if these are specifics, we should probably put them bullet points. Maybe you were a Black Hills High School recipient of a PAC award for academics. When did that occur? Oh, well, let me tell you in italics, I got that award in October 2020. October? Well, it is over, but that is not how you spell that word. Make sure you spell things correctly. That is a deal breaker for a resume. Maybe you were elected the Tumwater Youth Soccer Captain. Hey, way to go. When was that? Oh, that was August 2019. Notice that these are all being listed in reverse chronological order, okay? That's just something that we do for resumes, right? It's a matter of attention to detail. And if you don't do this, you're just signaling to your employer that you don't know stuff, right? That you don't know that resumes list things in reverse chronological order, or you're signaling to your employer that you don't care, right? That you don't have that attention to detail. So it's just one of those small things that we want to get right. That's really all a resume is. You're listing out your um, credentials, but a lot of it comes down to that attention to detail. Okay, it's very important. Um, all right. Let's do references and then we're going to come back to achievements. A lot of people like to put available on request for references, which makes sense because references are always asked for in the application as well. We want to see your references. We want to know that you've got 3 of them. So if you're turning this in as a part of your graduation requirement, do include your references. So what do you need to include in your references? Well, we need to know who the person is. We probably want to know what their role was to you, right? What your relationship was with this person. And then we need some way to get a hold of them. Just a phone number will work. Feel free to add an email as well. 432. Yeah, their phone number is totally 7654321. Um, quick note on references. References ought not to be related to you. No, your mom cannot be a reference. Avoid teachers if possible, right? Everybody's got teachers. Everybody's got at least a teacher. They would be a great reference, but your references should go beyond that. Should I mean, as all parts of your resume should, it should go beyond what everyone else is doing. So if you've got a boss or a coach or a supervisor from a volunteer gig, those are the people that we want to include as references. If you don't have any of those people, if you never had a job or you didn't do your volunteer hours even though it's a graduation requirement, you totally should have. I mean, hey, then we got to do what we got to do, and maybe ask a teacher that you had a good relationship with to be a character reference for you. We need 3. I'm going to include Eddie Betterson, to use that babysitting family from earlier. Delete that. I don't want commas between there, and I want to make sure this is consistent. Betty's phone number is totally 1357999. And finally, I need one more. So I think I'm going to include Becky Beckerson, who was the greatest soccer coach of all time. Her phone number is totally 2468000. So we've got references, we've got who they are, their relationship to me, contact information. It might be a good idea to include an email as well. Um, you can see, I mean, check online how people format their references. But here's the reason why I like the bare bones name, relationship, phone number is look, I mean, as you can see, we're already on page two. We're going to need to cut out some space. So one line references are going to be a lot better bang for our buck when it comes to real estate on the resume compared to like 2 or 3 line references. So I'm doing everything I can to keep it concise, right? That was rule number one, concise resume. Now, here's what we got to do. We got to cut some stuff out because we are bleeding on to the second page. I don't have any skills that I need my employer to know about, right? I'm not applying for a restaurant gig with a food handler's permit. I'm not a lifeguard with CPR certification. I don't know Python. This is going away. I have one space between each section. I'm keeping it consistent. I also, I don't have anything to say in the objective that's not totally lame fluff. So I'm just going to delete that as well. And I'm just going to come right out with my education experience, and I'm just going to jump right in to my resume and all of my stuff. Oh no, Becky, you're still on page two. Got to fix that. All right. So here's the deal. We need to make sure that only the best and most relevant information is on our resume. As you progress through life, as you level up, you get to cut out the stuff that's not as important, right? So as you have better and better job experience, better and better volunteer experience, you maybe even earn better and better achievements. If you need to save room, maybe we can just cut out this elected Tumwater youth soccer captain from when I was 12. In fact, don't include anything on your resume from before high school. That should just be a rule of thumb, by the way. Um, but let's say this was you were elected Tumwater Youth Soccer captain when you were a sophomore. That's not for nothing. I would include that if you had enough room on your resume. Let's do some problem solving. I am applying for a job at the library. Maybe the library would rather know that I was awarded for academics and I was, a good student in high school. Maybe I'm applying for a job as a camp counselor or like even a soccer coach. Oh, got it. Camp counselor at a soccer camp. They would probably prefer to see my experience with soccer, right? So that's going to determine which information you keep and which you delete. So in this case, let's say I'm applying to the library gig. I'm going to leave the academic award, and that's how I'm going to save space. I highly recommend customizing your resume for the job you're applying to. Uh, you're not locked into your resume. You can tweak it, customize it, change it as needed to show your potential employer the best version of yourself, right? Maybe that means advertising certain experience over other experience. Alrighty, let's do a quick review of our resume. Contact information at the top, centered. Billy Billerson, it's my name and it's huge. Makes my resume easy to find in a stack. I've got my basic contact information below so that I can be reached and hired. All of my major categories are big, size 14, maybe 16, right? Maybe even bigger than that. But I'm going to keep it simple. They're going to be a little bit bigger and bold and underlined. You know you're getting to a new section of my resume when you get to the big, bold, underlined word. It's going to tell you where you are. Here's my education experience. If you went to multiple high schools, include all of your high schools. If you went to a program within your high school, for example, in our community, that's New Market, where it's like a trade program within the school day. That's the kind of thing that you could include in your resume, particularly if it's relevant to the job you're applying for. If you did Running Start, include the community college that you did Running Start through on your resume. But for me, I just kept it classic at AG West, Black Hills High School. These were the classes I took that might set me apart. These were the things I did that make me notable. My work experience includes McDonald's. The jobs that I did are in bold. I have the location. I have my job title. I have the dates. All dates are consistent and italicized. Okay. And then I've got bullet points to describe my duties. So remember, and this part is so extremely important, resume verbs. Resume verbs for the job descriptions. Okay. These paint a picture of what you did and the skills that you have. So you managed, you maintained, monitored, facilitated, resolved. This paints a picture of the kind of person you are. So get on Google, find a list of resume verbs, and find some great verbs to describe the kind of employer you are. Include achievements or take it out, right? It's really up to you. What are the things that you want to include? Maybe it's better that you have skills instead of achievements, right? Or maybe you don't have room for either of those things. It's really up to you to figure out what belongs on your resume, but we want to get it to one page. Okay, that's essential. Our resume needs to get as close to one page as possible, but definitely no more than one page. And if you're submitting this resume as part of your graduation requirement, make sure you have your 3 references included at the bottom. Congratulations, your resume is done.